Hi, I'm Shruti Meenakshi, Chartered Accountant in practice for past 4 years. So now we are already around our exam dates. That is 5th July is what as of now we know that exams are going to be conducted. So already we almost have only 1 month left. So how are we going to approach towards MCQ? Because now that for past 2 years we have a pattern of 30-70 mark proportion. That is 30 marks of MCQ. With regard to intermediate, there are going to be 4 papers with this 30-70 pattern. So how are we going to attend? And the list which we are going to see now is purely illustrative based on the past experience of what I have seen in the question papers and what my students have told me about their experience with the question paper in our institute format. So starting with how many marks and how many minutes, that is we have 3 hours, that is 180 minutes for the total of 100 marks we are going to attend. So less than 2 minutes per mark, that is 1.8 minutes. So round of 2, like some say 1.5 minutes per mark we are going to give for each question. So either your MCQ can be for 1 mark or max of 2 marks. So either 1.5 minutes or max of 3 minutes is what you can allocate per MCQ. So first 1 hour. As we have been mentioning in our many of the videos and many of our sessions that the first 1 hour is going to be very crucial for your examinations. That is, the first 1 hour is where you are going to write or finish off your first 40 marks. So by end of say 2 to 3, so 3 o'clock you are going to be sure that you have already got like 40 marks. That is, you have already cleared that paper. And every other mark you are going to get for next 2 hours is either going to help you get the total for the group by itself or achieve an exemption in that exam. So that is how we are going to attend every paper of ours. Next is choose wisely. So even while choosing an MCQ or any other question for the matter, so again while writing it for the first 1 hour, how are we going to get that 40 marks? By allocating or by choosing those questions which require less time than any other question. For example, there can be a direct question or there can be an indirect question. That is indirect as in where there is so much of work involved or the numbers are involved, calculation is involved. On the other hand, there can be a question where purely knowing a provision is going to help us. So we'll see few examples where such questions are involved. So one example is where the maximum, this is as per our paper 2, which is corporate and other laws, what is a maximum tenure for which a company can accept or renew deposits for its members as well as public. So if you see such kind of questions, I would suggest that go for such questions, because by knowing the provision by itself, we can go for the answer. You need not actually calculate anything or spend any time in this. So as such, if this was asked for 1 mark, then you need not spend 1.5 minutes in this. By seeing the question, we know that the answer is going to be 36 months. So only by knowing the provision by itself, we can answer this question. We need not actually spend time with this question. And the next type of example is from the auditing paper. Now we are going to understand other types of questions. One is direct question. Here it says which of the following is fund-based advance. So this is we can call it either it as a positive question or a direct question. No tricky or any other agenda is involved in this question. So the institute just wants to verify whether you know about advances. So if you see fund-based advances, whether term loan, cash credit and the other loans, even if you see demand loans, everywhere actual flow of cash is involved, therefore all of the above. Whereas the other type of question can be negative question, where it says which of the following is not a fund-based advances, where none of the above can be an answer and you should go for that option. So you have to be aware of the concept and also check the kind of tone used in the question by the institute. Next question is where I have mentioned about negative or indirect question. So if you see here, which of the following is not classification of an NPA? So here, what is that you have to be aware about? The point that it is not classified as. Since the question by itself is in a negative tone, you have to check for the exceptions in the answer. So the exception here is impaired. So impaired is not a classification of NPA. Other three are the classification of types that an NPA can be classified. Moving on with the next example. This is from numbers. So with numbers, how do we deal with it? So Mr. X, aged 61 years, received a dividend of rupees 12 lakhs from ABC Limited in previous year 2021. Interest on loan taken for the purpose of investment in ABC Limited is 3 lakhs. Income included in the hands of Mr. X for previous year would be. So we have four examples or four options for this question. So how to attempt such kind of questions? One, we know that interest on loan taken for such question or such kind of loan is actually available. So how do we go about it? First, exclude 12 lakhs because under section 57 exemption or the deduction is actually allowed. So 12 lakhs cannot be the option. So strike out 12 lakhs. The other option is there cannot be a scenario where against 12 lakhs, 10 lakhs of exemption is available. So again strike out that also because the exemption or what was previously available for local dividend is not available since DDT is scrapped from the current year. Even that exception will not be allowed. So go strike out option D also. Now we will be left with 2 points. One is B and C. Either the entire 3 lakhs is allowed or there is a slab. So once you know the provision that only 20% on the amount of income, that is the max slab is set. So here 12 lakhs, maximum of 20% slab, which is 2,40,000. However, the actual interest incurred is 3 lakhs, only 2,40,000 is allowed. So the answer shall be 9,60,000. Moving on to the next example. Again, the direct tax question. So here we are seeing a classic example of how we have to interpret a law. Though this is purely an aspect of studying the direct tax by itself, not just answering the MCQ. So if you see here, there is a scenario or there is a question based on filing of return of income. A person with gross total income of 1,50,000. In general, if a person has only 1,50,000 of total income, he need not file return of income, because the income does not exceed the basic exemption limit, which is 2,50,000. But by further studying the question or the options available to us, option 1 of scenario 1 says that we have an issue where it includes a capital gain of 50,000 after claiming an exemption under section 54 of 20 lakhs. So the capital gain was 20 lakhs, 50,000, and section 54 exemption is availed, where 20 lakhs is again claimed, and the difference of 50,000 is included in the gross total income of total 1.5 lakh. Scenario 2 is where he holds foreign assets. So how do we go? Again, for these two options, whether we have to check whether that 1,50,000 or the basic exemption limit of 2,50,000 is before claiming any deduction available against the Act or under this Act, or after claiming any deduction. So it is only before claiming any deduction. Therefore, even before claiming the deduction, it was much higher than the basic exemption limit, that is 20,50,000. Therefore, in first scenario, the individual has to file return of income. An exception, we also know that if an individual is holding any foreign asset, he has to file return of income. So therefore, the answer is both 1 and 2. So here the tricky part is that, or if you see option 2 is now the tricky part, because we know the provision where from the Act. But however, the first point might lead to confusion and you might go for option 2 if you are not aware whether it is before the deductions or after the deductions. Moving on with examples. Applicability of withdrawal by an individual who is filing return of income regularly. So if you see, there are two parts to section 194 NTDS, where the one is about the individual who is filing return of income. The other part of the section is applicable to those who are not filing return of income. Here the question talks about an amount of rupees 45 lakhs. So first, where a return of income is being filed, and that is what is tested here, TDS cannot be made applicable. So if there are 4 options, then should be the answer. Because if you use exclusion method, it doesn't make sense here. Again, once you see the numbers, don't go for exclusion of options, because here you know the provision that if the person has already filed return of income, the slab limit is 1 crore. Only for the other part, that is when the return of income is not filed, it is 20 lakhs. So you cannot upfront use any method on any amount of questions. So it does differ from question to question. So based on your experience, so to gain experience, the next 1 month, maybe you can spend daily 1 hour to attend different kinds of MCQ. So, the more the number of MCQs, the better your experience in studying or in capturing what they are trying to actually test in you. So, how to spend the time wisely in such MCQs? Now that we know, we have for 4 papers 30 marks of MCQ and 70 marks in descriptive. So, I would say that this 30 marks is a boom to last 2 years of people who have been attempting exams and to all those who are going to write also. Because if this 30 marks, we were to get the same 30 marks before MCQ was introduced, we'll have to prove to the examiner by writing a descriptive question in detail that we know the provision. That is not the case in case of MCQ. So once you choose the right answer, they know that you are aware of the provisions, you have understood the question, and you are going to get the marks irrespective of the steps or anything else involved. However, in case of a descriptive question, step marks are involved and any other important points, and everything should be there for you to actually get that mark, the same 1 or 2 marks, the other part, that is MCQ. So go for the easy MCQs first. For example, if a case study is given and based on which 5 questions are given. So when you have even that first 15 minutes which is given for studying the question paper or understanding the question paper, and also the time which is given for attempting, that is 3 hours, do not study the case study first, rather go for the MCQs first. So first, if you study the MCQ, you will actually know how to interpret the question given. So first, if you start straight away by reading the case study given, you will read it as if it's a story. So always start from the question part so that you know how or which section is being tested. So what are all the attention that or what are all the details I should be given priority to while reading the case study as such. And also there is always a possibility that the questions are straightly from the provision or the Bare Act is being tested rather than the case study based. For example, there can be a case study, however, there are say 5 MCQs based on such case study. However, there are chances that there are say 2 questions which are direct from the provision by itself, which has 0 relevance to the case study. So you are actually saving time for those 2 MCQs, which you would have given, say, you have only 3 minutes of time to give for that MCQ. Rather, by studying the question directly, you have actually saved your time, which can be devoted to a descriptive question. Since for the next 1 month we have time for attending our exams, start doing MCQs daily. At least give 1 hour daily to attend any MCQs. Try different MCQs to understand the crux or also to understand the nuances and understand the way you can interpret any questions. Do get back if you have any doubts regarding this or any other assistance for MCQ. Thank you.